Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello.
And Tim, are you ready?
Nothing clever today.
This is the first of 3 episodes we're recording today, Tim. Maybe I hope you've got something planned for recordings 2 and 3. This is a bad sign. This is a bad sign. But yeah, are you ready for today's seance, Tim?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Because this is a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror films every week. And on this episode, we are doing a fresh, out-the-oven movie. More fresh than most movies we do, in fact. Not just because it just came out this past weekend, or just before the weekend, which is Host, we're talking about, the Shudder exclusive, which is a movie that was conceived, shot, and released entirely in quarantine, and references the pandemic a little bit during its film, during the runtime. But the fact that this was only just conceived, because I think that director did an interview this week saying that the idea started 12 weeks ago. So this, from Genesis to release, was 12 weeks, which is insane. But then it makes sense. There's a lot less things to deal with in this movie because it's it's a horror movie told through a Zoom call. Skype is so last year apparently, but so that's the basic thing. Is a bunch of characters because they can't hang out because they're in quarantine. Which, by the way, is just weird. First of all, watching a movie where they reference lockdown and they reference like some of the things. It's one of those things where people watching this in like 30 or 40 years who, don't necessarily remember off the top of their head that 2020 was the year that all this was happening. Are maybe going to have to be like have it explained to them what was going on. Yeah. Why the bumping elbows? what's happening? But so they do a seance, and of course they awaken a malevolent spirit. Spooky things happen, and that's the basic gist of it. Obviously, we'll save the rest for spoilers, so we'll get to that in due course. But we'll start spoiler free. And just before we start on YouTube, if you hit the like button, if you like the show, it's a nice, easy way to support everything we do. So there's your liking plug for the start of the show. Yes, I feel like a shell. Okay, we can move on with that. So yeah, I guess that's the. So I mean, obviously, the obvious comparison for this is Unfriended, because Unfriended was the movie that did the computer screen. It's all a Skype call, and surprisingly was quite good.
Yeah. And
I said, after we reviewed that movie, that okay, they can never do this again. Now they did all the best ideas they could have had in one of these movies, and it's done. And then Unfriended Dark Web came out. And they actually put enough of a twist on it that I was like, oh, you know what? I don't hate that this exists. This actually has a lot of merit to it. Could you imagine if they never made Unfriended 1 and 2?
Yeah.
And this movie Host only existed and was created as it is with different people in different houses recording stuff for a movie. Only existed because of the current climate, because of what's happening right now. It's almost like Unfriended kind of. I mean, it's still impressive, but Unfriended kind of like makes it feel a little less special because it was already done.
I totally get it. Like, I do think it is a very impressive what they're doing with what they have, but like, like you said, it's like, all right, but it's not like creating something completely new, doing something we never seen before. It's not like a. I mean, it's still. I don't want to take anything away from the movie, but I guess. I guess we haven't seen it on Zoom before.
That is true. So the movie's actually really short. That's one of the first things we should probably say is that it's actually an hour long.
Thank God.
Which, I mean, it's convenient for fitting in stuff. Like I said, we had 3 movies to do today, recording wise, so having one of them only be an hour was nice. Yeah. And maybe that's okay if some movies will only want to be an hour long. Because, I mean, sometimes we watch a 90-minute movie and go, I feel like it was maybe stretching out a little bit. Yeah. Imagine if they all just said, hey, why don't we just be 70 minutes long instead of 90 minutes long?
I think especially in this day and age of, like, so many different avenues for content, like, it's not like we're beholden to this strict model of, like, everything is in the theater and it has to be this long or it needs to be this long on TV for commercial breaks and stuff. It's like, no, I mean, everything is so much more freer now. You can just let stuff be what it wants to be. I actually like hate when when you're watching like a show on Netflix and like I don't know, like some, like, sometimes they'll change it up, but sometimes they seem so beholden for, like, we need to have 13 episodes and they all need to be 53 minutes long, and it's kind of like, well, like, why, like, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can literally do whatever you want. Like, I don't know, I kind of like this, normalizing of just letting stuff be what it wants to be.
That was definitely something early Netflix shows had a problems where they were insistent on hitting an hour for every episode, and it was like so exhausting. And even Umbrella Academy just came back for season 2 this weekend, and
I can't wait.
What's interesting about it is that the first season, which I enjoyed, but one of my complaints in season 1 is that of the 10 episodes, most of them were an hour long, and I felt this kind of the pacing be a bit of a slog in a lot of those episodes. In season 2, if you look at the runtimes, most of the episodes are 43 to 45 minutes. They're
nice.
much shorter than season 1, so it feels like they even were aware that their pacing was a bit off, and that maybe I mean, I'm assuming that that's the case. I've only watched one episode so far, so I can't say for certain if that's what's happened. But
did you watch I'm Not Okay With This?
I know
that's the Netflix show starring like the two of the kids from It.
No, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I remember the trailer. I didn't watch it, no.
Yeah, just because the only we just like watched it recently, just kind of took a chance on it. I actually thought it was pretty good. I'd recommend checking it out if you're ever bored. But like, it's only, I think, like 7 episodes, and I think they're between about 20 to 30 minutes each, and it just felt like very refreshing to watch something that's like, oh, cool. They're not like stretching this out, and like, they easily could have made everything an hour, but I thought that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So, Host. Simple film, Zoom call, seance, and obviously inspired because this is what we can do right now. Lots of proper content, as it were, can't be made right now. Although, obviously, by now things are starting to shoot certain places, but it's not something that they can do en masse yet. So this is a movie that was designed, and there's definitely a couple of segments, definitely towards the end, and a couple of things where there's actually like visual effects where I'm like, so how? I almost am more fascinated in the making of this movie than I am the movie itself. Just and I'm like, okay, so if these people were controlling a lot of their own stuff at their own places, and I assume they were all recording video separately locally, so that the quality would always be as good as they could, have it. Kind of like how Tim record his own audio, so in case there's any distortion over Skype, I can put in his audio and it sounds better. So I assume that's kind of the case here, and I assume that there's a lot. So it's kind of funny watching something that. It's a movie that's kind of made the same way we record our podcast, which I think is really hilarious.
Why are we not making a movie?
Hey, Tim, if you want to make a movie, let's make a movie.
Okay. Well,
romantic comedy?
Right.
What are we doing?
We'll call it co-host.
Cool. And they can't even sue us for that. I love it. Co-host. That's so good. All right. Coming to a shoddy streaming service near you, 2024, where we're slow workers. We can't do 12 weeks, you kidding me? So, yeah, I guess I'll ask the question. Tim, what did you think of Host?
I liked it quite a bit, and I do think, it's kind of funny because it seemed to kind of just drop out of nowhere. It's almost like kind of like a surprise. Like, I think we had heard like a little bit about it, but I don't know if we saw like a trailer or anything. And then, all of a sudden, Shudder just kind of comes out of nowhere with it. And I started to see a lot of, people on Twitter talking about it. And we're actually even going to do another movie, but we kind of talked about it and we're like, hey, maybe we should check this out. It's getting some rumblings and stuff. And a lot of people seem to really, really love it. And I mean, and I agree, it is really cool. I do think it's not maybe the most amazing movie, but I think there are like a lot of factors, like we kind of talked about, where like just the fact that, it was made so fast and during this really weird time. And like you said, it's a movie that actually references what's going on right now, like, which it is kind of weird, but also I think it's kind of refreshing because, sometimes like, with everything that's going on, you watch a movie and like, people are going into a movie theater and hugging and like, touching, and sometimes you do get a little bit.
Honestly,
like,
it's kind of weird. Just even not even counting the current climate and what's going on, but like, movies by their nature take a while to make. So typically, the newest thing that a movie will reference will be a year ago, or maybe in some cases they'll reference something maybe earlier that year. Let's say a quick horror movie relative to Hollywood is churned out, from like March to like September for an October release. Maybe they'll reference something from the start of the year, but for the most part, movies can't reference things that far back. TV gets away with it a little bit more because TV's made kind of on the go a little bit, so you can maybe get like a reference that's only a couple of months old in a TV show. So there's actually there's something really weird about a movie referencing what's going on right now, to the point where, okay, sure, let's say the pandemic kind of wrapped up quite quickly. This might have been slightly out of date because it did take a few months to make, right? But the fact that there's references to what's going on in the world as it's still going on in this movie is kind of weird. It's kind of weird for a movie to not be referencing it in hindsight. It's no, this is actually something that's happening right now. So that's just kind of a surreal, odd thing. Regardless of how good are the horror elements or anything else, it's odd. But.
Yeah. And so so I think that basically what it comes down to is, because I do think the characters are, likable enough. Like, they do kind of, maybe every now and again, like, maybe someone might be like a little annoying, but it kind of fits like what they're going for. Like, the characters, their friends, they're on a Skype call. And then I do think, this, once the horror stuff starts, because I was surprised that it kind of takes a while to get going, especially with such a short runtime. I was kind of wondering like, like we don't really have like that much time, but I do think like once it gets going, it is pretty well done. And again, I think it's just it was a like a pretty decent movie, but then it just feels kind of well, maybe I should say more than decent. Like, I think it was like, perfectly good movie, but then I don't know, it just feels like with a lot of the stuff around it that it kind of, I don't know, elevates it a bit. And like you said, there's like a kind of interesting fascination and stuff with it. But I mean, overall, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think its shorter runtime is a benefit to it because it doesn't feel like it's dragging kind of the scares out to, it feels like once things start happening, things happen pretty quickly. And
one thing we didn't mention with the runtime too is that I actually like that it's kind of part of the story, because I don't really know much about Zoom. I've been on it a few times, but I don't really use it. But I guess if you don't pay for it, you only have like a certain time limit on it.
I knew this, yeah. So the Zoom has an hour time limit for free group calls, and this movie kind of incorporates that to the point where, I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler to say this, but at the end of a Zoom call, it literally has a countdown to when the call's going to end. So the end of the movie does literally have a timer in the corner, which I noticed. I noticed it counting down from like maybe like the 20-second mark, and I'm like, this is counting down to when it's going to cut away. Like, I know when this movie's going to end because it's counting down in the corner, which is again kind of surreal and different.
Yeah, like I forget when I noticed it, but like because I wasn't sure if it had been there the whole movie or anything, or I guess maybe it just does it like towards the end once it's about to go. But once you notice that in the corner, it's like kind of cool. It's like, oh no, like, oh, we're getting down here.
It adds an interesting bit of tension to the final moments that you wouldn't really be able to achieve any other way, because it's something that's almost meta. It's this like the movie is literally going to cut to the credits or whatever it's going to do at the end here in this number of seconds, and that's all the time we have. So it's almost basically saying, assuming there's going to be a jump scare, say at the end, right? It's almost saying, this is when the jump scare's coming. We're telling you, we're giving you a countdown. Here it's coming. It's 5, 4, 3, and that's kind of an interesting element as well. I appreciated that. I appreciated that the credits at the end are actually like it's like a list of people in a Zoom call, and they're just scrolling down. One of the little details that I really liked about that actually is that all of their mics are muted in this list of credits, but the sound guy, his mic wasn't muted, and I thought that was a really nice little touch.
Oh, I didn't notice. That's cool.
Yeah, that was a nice little touch. So obviously, I mean, that sounds like spoiler stuff gets ended, but it's the credits. Like, the actual story is something that obviously we're going to save for spoilers. But yeah, you've got 5 main characters essentially who are on this call. There's kind of a 6th, and there's because it's five women who are on the call who are all friends. The first one we meet is Haley, who's an American, but the rest are all English. And I didn't realize going into this that it's a British movie. I
had no idea.
I guess I just assumed it was American, but obviously it's like, okay, so it was like we meet Haley, who's American, and then we meet Jemma, who's got an English accent. It's like, okay, 50-50. But then every character after that was well, not all English actually. The person performing the seance was actually Scottish. There's an older Scottish woman who, it was kind of weird for me actually, because her voice was very not so much teacher, but it sounded a lot like a person who would often come into school to give a talk on something.
On the dead?
Not on the dead. But on whatever
in school
topic.
seance.
My school did not have any seances, no. But I think it was the way she kept apologizing and she kept saying sorry. I just didn't know. It was more of a personal thing, but it was give me flashbacks. Give me flashbacks to school. Anyway, so that's the kind of our main characters, and they kind of do a decent enough job of differentiating them. There's some that are a bit more developed than others, or are more memorable than others. I think the one who gets maybe the shortest end of the stick is Emma, who kind of feels like she doesn't really have her own plot thing. See, everyone else has a thing. Like, I think Caroline has got kind of a she actually. I suppose Emma does play with the face cam stuff where she's got the face effects.
Oh, yeah.
That's maybe the only thing she does that's kind of stands out. But Caroline has the whole background thing. Radina's got this boyfriend she's living with that she only moved in with for lockdown, so it's kind of awkward and tense, and you know. Jemma is a bit of a joker, but she seems to be the kind of the best friend of Haley. They seem to be the closest. And Haley's the one who's done this before, who's like making them all promise to be nice to the medium, I guess. If that's what she is. But yes, what are you gonna say, Tim?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think there's like, I don't know if there was like a ton of like great uses with, because like, you know, one of the fun things about this is trying to figure out like, you know, different scares using the technology, and I do think the like, not necessarily that like, yeah, everything needs to be like completely unique, but like, I don't know if there was a ton of advantages of that, but I do think the
there's one that stuck out to me as being quite good, but
the background one though I really liked.
Yes,
I mean I think and I think people have seen that before, where like I mean, I forget what it is, but just like, yeah, seeing online, like people can make their own backgrounds in Zoom, and like I've seen people do this before, where they'll like film themselves in the background so that you can then have a background where you're talking and then yourself comes in and stuff. And I thought that was used like really effectively.
Yeah. Obviously we'll get into spoilers as to how, but and there's some good scares. There's definitely some of them are very much of the jump variety, but some of them are good jump scares, so I can't really fault that too much. I will say, if I have critiques about the horror elements, is that I do think the actual horror like happenings and plots and how some of the characters kind of wrap up their parts of the story, some of it is a bit in like the sort of horror tropes 101 kind of way, or even like found footage 101 kind of way. There's a couple of things where it's like, oh, the camera fell to the ground, and
sure,
it's, there's definitely some elements where it feels like, okay, we're just doing the typical thing, even if the circumstances around the movie are very different. But there is a couple of notable standout scares. There's a couple of notable standout things. There's one where I thought they were doing a very normal found footage thing, but then it went one step further and made it kind of grotesque, and I went, oh, you know what? Okay, they added their own spin on that. I'll give them points. But it was a fun watch. It was an easy watch. I think the tension when they start like suspecting, hearing noises, or it kind of was grabbing me a little bit, and I was kind of in the moment. I was kind of with them, and then when the first sort of like undisputable thing happens, I thought it was quite effective, and it was like, yeah, and something had there had to be something undisputable, because there was enough doubt created about everything so far that it was like, well, for them to actually get scared now, there has to be something that they cannot write off. There has to be something that's just clearly, spooky.
Yeah, and I also think it's like a fun Easter egg movie. Like, I kind of want to go back and like watch it to see. I'm sure there's stuff I missed in the background, because it's definitely stuff where like they don't call attention to it. Like someone just be walking, and like there's definitely one or two times where I was watching with my wife, and she would be like, "Oh, did you just see like that in the background?" I was like, "Oh no, I missed it. Like, let's go back and check that out," or something. Like, Seems like a fun movie to put like little stuff like that in.
Yeah,
But
that was one of the things actually that stuck out to me is that several of the characters that are on this call aren't actually in houses alone, which I think is the typical thing to do with this premise, is you have
Yeah.
them be in a house on their own, or at least feels that way. But there's a character who's with their parents, there's another character who's with a boyfriend, there's another character who, like, most of them actually have other people in their apartments or houses, which is kind of interesting. In a lot of ways, and maybe even brings up some questions later as far as like some plot things, as to why certain why certain people don't necessarily say, "Hey, I'm hearing some weird screaming from upstairs. Maybe I should maybe I should go check on the kid."
Yeah, totally. And it is kind of funny. Just thinking about kind of some of the stuff you were saying earlier with it being like a little tropey and jump scary. It is. I do think it's interesting how the way you shoot something and this and everything, like how that can affect it, because yeah, like imagine if this wasn't on Zoom, like if it was just a normal, like obviously that would take away a lot of the premise, but like yeah, if they changed it to where everyone was just in a house together, like we would probably hate this movie because it would just probably seem like such a like standard tropey movie or whatever. But I don't know, I just think it's kind of interesting that like because of the circumstances of how it's like made and everything, that
the whole thing about doing a movie like this, and the whole point of found footage in a lot of ways, is to try and make it feel like really grounded, so that it feels like it's just happening to real people, and that's where the tension comes from. And if the performances kind of back that up and they feel natural, and I would say they do here, this feels like a group of friends to feel natural characters, for the most part. Nothing stuck out to me as feeling off about it.
Oh yeah, totally.
And, it's worth mentioning all the actors, they're all using their real names. Like Haley, her real name is Haley. Gemma's real name is Jemma. Like so clearly that's something they did intentionally to just make them feel more comfortable as they were talking to each other, because maybe they are all friends as well. I have no idea. I mean,
or maybe they just didn't know how to change their Zoom names. We just gotta go with
that was actually ridiculous. Zoom has their names in the corner of the video for each person. This is the only movie I've ever watched where every single character's labeled the entire time, which is the only reason why I remember all their names, because their names are constantly next to their faces the entire time. So thanks for that movie, I guess.
What's kind of funny is like I actually do like the found footage medium and the idea of found footage a lot, but it seems like once it like obviously there's a Blair Witch, but then once it kind of got like repopularized with a Paranormal Activity, it seems like we had such a glut of bad found footage movies that it just leaves kind of like a very like sour taste. And it's funny with I don't know if we have a name for these like kind of like computer screen movies, but it seems like they've all been like pretty good so far.
I don't know, this is not an official name, but if I was going to name it, it'd probably be something like screen share movies or something. I don't know, because you're just looking at what's on a screen. I don't know. Because what have we had? We've had Unfriended 1 and 2. We've had this. We had one that wasn't
Searching.
quite. That wasn't a horror movie. That was more of a thriller. But it fits into the subgenre. So why not? I mean, I suppose there's no reason why you can't apply this to other genres if you wanted to.
Sure.
And the same goes with found footage, but found footage has never really made it to. I mean, I guess Cloverfield's slightly, more sci-fi than it is horror, but it's still it's close enough. Yeah. So, but when's the found footage like action comedy going to have? Like,
it could possibly be interesting. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but yeah, it's kind of funny you haven't really seen many other ones. I think there were, even before like Unfriended, I think there were a few like other small movies that were doing like kind of similar stuff, but I don't think maybe many really hit it big or really used it to their advantage. I know there's one, The Den, that I think a lot of people talk about. I think that was maybe something to do with like a chat room premise, but
okay.
I think I watched it a long time ago, but I don't remember much about it. But I think that's one a lot of people seem to like. Maybe we'll have to do it at some point. But yeah, I mean, as far as like kind of like the big standout ones, so I guess there haven't been that many so far, but the ones that have been have all been pretty good.
Yeah. What's interesting is I'm clicking on some of the actors here, and they all seem to have been in a film called Dawn of Death together. So, Clearly, they've worked together before, so which isn't a surprise that this was a project that came out of like a bunch of friends who have worked together already. Making this together. So, yeah, I guess the other complaint maybe is that there's definitely a couple of contrivances again with the sort of the found footage slash webcam style of movie where there's definitely, I'd say, the last like 5 minutes where I'm like, why is someone even bothering with the laptop at this point? Like it doesn't feel like it's adding anything. There might be technically an excuse for it, which we'll talk about in spoilers, but that was kind of just it goes back to that thing that we talk about in a lot of found footage movies, where there's always a point where you're like, why are they still filming? Why are they holding a camera?
Yeah. Drop
it. You'll be quicker. You'll run away quicker if you're not holding the big heavy camera.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny because I think like maybe they don't outright come in and say it, but like I do think there is like a lot of like reasoning in this, like like one of the big things that you would think in this movie is, all right, so why don't you like run out and go get someone, or have someone come over if you're scared or whatever. But then obviously you think like, oh wait, no, like this is during the the pandemic, like people can't just easily go outside, or even if you want someone to come over or something, like, or whatever, like you're running a possibly even other like potential risk to your health. And then, like,
there's a certain point in this movie though where I'd happily risk the virus over what's happening.
That's true. But like, I do like that added element where it's like, they don't really bring it up, but because of what's going on, that like there's that like danger as well. And then like also with like, if there's a spooky noise and you're going to explore it, like if you are by yourself, it's like, oh yeah, well, of course, like, bring your laptop because that's where your friends are and that's who you're talking with. So I do like that it kind of makes
for the most part
makes more sense.
For the most part it makes more sense, because one of the things that I like about movies that like this, if they're done well, is like how they kind of capture things and how they, because it's kind of like one of the things I love about bottle movies, right, where movies are all set in one location, is that it forces the writing to kind of have all the conflict, have all the drama come out in organic ways, but through conversation and in the context of wherever they are. And I think movies like Host or Unfriended, one of the things that I loved about Unfriended is that it used the mechanic of what it is, which is the computer screen. So we're watching what someone's doing on a computer, and so many things about what that person clicked on or Googled or whatever revealed more about the character. It was a way to convey information that was different and unique to that mechanic, and it kind of justified why it was told that way. And I think one of the things that I love about movies with a gimmick, quote unquote, like this, is that, okay, so how do you believably get across a certain amounts of information, and how do you use what the laptop camera can't see to add to the horror? Which is why I think a lot of these like gimmicky ways of telling stories lend themselves to horror movies, because horror movies are often about what you don't see or hear. It's about having your view obstructed, and what's more of an obstruction than only having one camera in one place, and you can see like the door frame, so you can see if anything walks past, but you can't see anything on either side. Simple things like that. But it's how do you expand that and sort of make a whole movie out of those kind of ideas. And if anything, once things get more overtly supernatural is maybe where it falls into some of the traps a bit more, because at that point it's just, okay, this is just typical supernatural stuff. There is one really cool supernatural thing that happens in this though that I kind of liked, but it was definitely one of the more over the top moments though in the whole thing. So we'll talk, because one of the problems I always have with supernatural movies, if I stop and think about them too much, is that when they start doing things like opening like cupboard doors and like slamming pots and pans and things, and I'm like, okay, what's the demon or ghost thinking here exactly? Like, movies would have you believe that demons and ghosts love just like teasing people and like doing all these wee creepy things to get And I'm like, if they're this malicious, like, why aren't they just killing someone outright, or why aren't they doing more creative things? I don't know.
Sure.
This is not this movie's problem. This is just a sort of an ongoing thing that kind of creeps into my head from time to time when I'm watching supernatural stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What is the logic of the ghost? What was the thought process for this particular prank they're playing? Anywho, something to add, Timothy?
Nope.
Okay, just check. I think we'll get into spoilers though. I think we're at that point. Before we get to spoilers, though, I will thank our Patreon producers for the month of August. So thank you, Alison M. Fordyce, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palisades, David Schott, Board Now, Zammer Jammer, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, and Brett Williams. They are all $20 above patrons, which makes them Patreon producers. But you can, of course, support us for much less than that. You can support us for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And for that $1, you'll get an exclusive extra episode of Screams After Midnight every month, where we do, lesser known films or goofier movies or whatever. Last movie we did was called Dead Heat. It was a buddy cop movie where one was a zombie from the 80s. So there's about 20 of those movies in the back catalogue. So if you sign up for the $1, you get access to all the bonus episodes that we've done so far. And there's a new one every month, as I say. There's bonuses for other shows. At the $5 tier, you get to vote on an episode once per month, and you get all the episodes a day early. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in helping keep all the content coming, and feel a little bit warm and fuzzy on the inside for supporting your favorite mediocre horror movie podcast. Thank you. So so full spoilers then for host from this point on. So the opening of the movie, and I kind of appreciate how much of the runtime it devotes to just kind of setting up the characters, because there's a good 20 to 25 minutes of this hour, which is just one by one the characters joining the call. They're kind of catching up. It reveals kind of that Radina's got this boyfriend who, because he's like chopping something in the kitchen in the background, and it's making a lot of noise, and she has to go and ask him to quit it.
Yeah.
And then
it's very awkward because they mention that they didn't know each other. They haven't known each other that long. They kind of moved in either right before quarantine or decided to move in during quarantine, and it seems like there's a lot of tension there.
Yeah, it sounds like the relationship was just starting. So when the whole quarantine thing kicked off, they said, why don't we just move in together and be a household, and that way we can spend time with each other in quarantine. And of course that seems to not be working out that well. We never really mentioned Teddy much in the spoiler free section. Teddy is kind of the sixth friend who comes on, and he's kind of an odd one because he's a bit older than the rest of them. I'm not really sure exactly what the relationship is with him, but he's got this girlfriend or wife, maybe it is now, who he's been with recently, and they kind of comment how he's always in photos with her. They're always on social media, she's always doing stuff with him. He actually dips out the movie quite early. He's there for the start of the seance, but very quickly the wife/girlfriend comes in and kind of interrupts him and sort of forces him to quit the call. It's can't go an hour without Teddy by her side. But he there you go.
I know it seemed a little unbelievable. I mean, well, maybe it's just the people I usually hang out with, but it's if you really make a special thing with your friends for just an hour or something, especially during a time when no one's doing anything, and it's she really wouldn't give them that much time.
Maybe they're still in the honeymoon phase. Maybe this is maybe she's jealous that he's off talking to 5 women. I don't know.
Was he one of their exes or something? I forget who it was, but it seemed they mentioned to someone something Ted's gonna be here, and hopefully they don't show his new girlfriend or something. It seemed there was I don't know, something.
Maybe, but I never got that impression. I just got the impression they all don't like her.
That could be. Maybe that's just it.
She's just the annoying girlfriend who never lets them just be there. She's always kind of forcing her way into everything. But because he sets up a thing. It has some comedy early on where he said hey, how about we all do a cheeky shot every time the medium says the word astral plane. So, and she says it quite early on, and you can see them sort of sneaking a drink, some of them. And then he kind of intentionally says, what's that word again? And sort of does it. So they're all kind of giggling to themselves, and Haley's getting kind of a little bit frustrated. Because one of the things that's set up is that the medium says that you have to be careful to respect the dead and respect the process, otherwise you're kind of inviting things. And of course they're all giggling, they're all kind of making fun of it a little bit. And then the big thing, of course, that happens that really kicks the plot off is that Jemma makes up, she sort of says she hears something, and then or she feels something, and she talks about someone, what name is she, Alan maybe, I don't know. It says and she's do you know anyone named Alan? It's yeah. And then the medium, her door goes, and she's sorry, I've got a delivery, I have to go see this. And when she leaves, Jemma starts laughing because she made this up and she's just pulling her leg. and Haley's really pissed at her, and it's a whole awkward thing. But yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, I would totally be the Haley in this situation, because I would definitely be the one that's like taking it very seriously and getting mad at everyone that's like goofing off. Like I've definitely like done stuff like that before, where it's like, hey guys, let's go on like a ghost tour or watch this like documentary on Bigfoot or something, and like everyone's laughing. I'm like, hey, it's just not funny.
Yeah. And you know, there is kind of a like there's one moment where the medium is still sitting there, and like she says she sees a light behind Radina, and you know I'm looking at it and I can't really see it, and they're looking for it, they can't really see it.
And it might be I don't know, maybe interesting to note too, that you know the medium does say that like oh yeah, usually you know she does this in person, that I think it's like the first time that they're doing it over the internet, but there shouldn't be any reason why.
Yeah. What are the?
But I feel like that, I don't know, like maybe adds like maybe some of the danger and like confusion and stuff.
One of the practical things that I really liked is that they all have to light candles. So from a lighting perspective, visually, it does kind of make the movie look more interesting. That they're all lit by a single candle, and they're in relative darkness, and they all have one candle. It gives it kind of an interesting vibe. And she explains that usually you form a circle, and that's to protect each other as we sort of like contact this world. And you've seen this in other supernatural movies where they contact the dead or whatever. But this idea of like we have to make sure we're in Ouija movies, they always say never do it on your own. You have to always be in at least a pair, because otherwise you can't protect yourself against whatever comes. So and basically what they speculate has happened later on, of course, is that Jemma, by making up like a fake person, has let something from the other side which can use this fake person as a mask to like kind of like appear. So it's something malicious, and that's kind of what the premise of the rest of the movie is. But what's really fun though is that so some creepy stuff starts happening, very simple stuff, a noise here, whatever. But then the medium's internet goes out, right? And how many, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but every so often we'll be recording something and one of us will cut out because the internet goes. So it's a very believable thing. But this is the person who knows what they're talking about, in theory. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they're left abandoned without this person, and it's kind of, it's this kind of awkward thing. And because they end up calling her at one point in the Haley gets her on the phone to talk to her, and she's like, yeah, my internet's out, and she's like trying to get her advice over the phone as weird things are happening. But obviously, because they've been giggling, because they've been laughing, like I was saying earlier, there had to be something that unequivocally proved something is going on. They can't, for this to get tense, quick enough for the rest of the movie to work, they're going to have something that they can't dispute. And sure enough, there's a moment where Haley's just pulled back in her chair, like across the room, and it's like, if that was a practical joke she was playing on her friends, it's like, well, like how did that'll taken a lot of time and effort. And this is actually one of the things that I'm very interested in terms of the production, is like, stuff like that. Like, did the actress have to like set this up herself? Did someone talk her through it? Or even something as simple as lighting. It's one thing when it's just a candle in front of their face, and that's essentially all the lighting they've got for a lot of the movie. But there's parts later on where is it Caroline who like goes and looks in the attic at one point, and so there's like she carries her laptop or whatever into the hall, and she's looking up and she's like turning the camera around in the attic, that classic old thing of peeking the camera up and turning it around. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, they had to make sure the lighting for all this worked and looked as best as it could on the camera. So like, did they have like someone who knew what they were doing like talk her through it? Did someone go to your house, in a mask and like set this up for her? Like, I'm curious about these things. I was thinking about it.
Oh yeah, me too, definitely. Like, I mean, if I had to assume, I was like trying to think, like maybe they had like a very, very small like crew, like, maybe a few people, maybe they got tested, and once they, knew like, that they don't have it, and then, maybe show up wearing masks and stuff. Like, I could conceivably see something like that happening, but I would love to know.
And I know someone will probably say, but is there any lighting concerns really? They're just doing like a natural looking movie on Zoom, right? Like, no. Everything has to be lit properly. See if Caroline, when she goes out into the hall and then goes up to the attic, if they had just done that with whatever lights were happening, if she just turned on the hall lights and did that, I guarantee you it would not have captured what it needed to, especially when she puts it up into the attic. And even the effect there, which the camera's like panning around and we see the feet hanging, and then the camera moves back and the feet aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
But although that was one of the moments that kind of I thought was a bit tropey. One, because we've seen this done a lot, but also it was a bit contrived in the sense that all the characters who are also watching this, all the other people on the call, all say to her, "Oh, quick, put the camera back. I think I saw something." What do you mean you think you saw something? It was clearly 2 feet.
It's legs.
There was no disputing what that was. Right, it was very obvious. It's not even like that she's turning it fast. It's quite slow. You get a good look at these feet as the camera's going past.
Especially because like everything is so tense at that moment. Like everyone is like so scared, and like you're hearing these noises. Like it's not like people would casually be looking at the screen. Like you would be glued to it. Like there's no way in hell you would miss it.
Because Caroline's the one who has the background, and she shows this off at the start when she's like, "Hey, quarantine's been kind of boring, so I've had a lot of time." And she shows off like, her background shows her walking in the room and going over to the drawers and like, combing her hair, whatever it is. And they're all kind of giggling about it. And of course, being a horror movie, I'm like, this is going to come back up later. There's no way we're not using this.
Yeah.
And so there's a great moment where it's not long after the attic stuff where she's just kind of distraught after that for a little bit, and she goes away to do something. And she's gone for a while while other characters are talking. They're kind of freaked out. And then eventually they start saying, "Oh, where's Caroline been? It's been a while." And she walks in and like, oh, there she is. And immediately I'm like, no, this is the footage from earlier.
Yeah.
This is the background. And the characters, to their credit, do realize this and like, hey, no, I think that's the background she made. That's not live. And it does this thing where there's just a quick shot of like her bloody face coming towards the camera. And we see... yeah, we do see later exactly. We see more of how she dies later. Bizarrely, I don't remember how that happened though. I think it was like something plays the footage back or something.
I don't know. I thought we basically just see her maybe slamming into the camera more and more, a few times.
Yeah, well, we did, but it wasn't in this scene though. It was later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought maybe that it was happening again or something. Like maybe even if she was dead at that point, it might just be slamming her head into it again. I don't know.
Nah, well, because it felt like it was showing like a bunch of... It was cutting between a lot of things happening, so I feel like it was showing stuff that had already happened, but I mean...
maybe.
It doesn't really matter that much, but...
what I like about this...
It was effective, though, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. And what I like about it a lot is... I think it's actually, like... it's creepy... Like, the actual... showing the bloody face and slamming against the computer, like that's fine, that's whatever. I think the creepiness is once that stops and then you still get the image of her, like the loop of her walking into the room and checking her phone and stuff. Like I like how every so often it would go back to that, just because it's just such a like kind of creepy image, knowing that this isn't real.
Every so often
behind this somewhere.
Every so often the box would come in and show her, walking in and combing her hair and whatever. I do think even before because again the slamming the head against the screen doesn't get seen till later. So at this point in the movie, you just see one quick like jump scare essentially of her face coming towards the camera. Enough where they're like, what was that? And unlike the feet, this one makes sense where it's so quick that like, wait, what was that? Yeah. Because they say, it looks like the laptop fell over, because it looked like it did when the head hit it.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that they're a little confused and they don't want to necessarily believe, what it looked like it might have been, kind of thing.
Right.
And but even before that though, even just like when they realize it's the footage and they're like, wait, where is she? What's happened? Why is it adds to the, even though she was already missing, so it's already creepy, and her absence, once you start seeing the video playback, it almost makes it even creepier, even though technically speaking it's not changed the situation. She's still missing,
right?
But the visual of her walking around like that makes it feel a bit more ominous.
Totally.
So no, I thought it was really effective. As much as I said that Emma doesn't have as much, because it feels like she's just there scared. Like her notable thing really is that she's got a sheet over her head for a lot of like the back half of the movie, where she's really scared about everything that's happening to everyone else. Because her big kind of ending, and I'm probably doing these out of order, but it doesn't really matter that much. Is that she hears some noises, she takes the camera into the sort of living room or whatever, where the kitchen's off to the side, and she's the one who's been playing with the face mask thing on Zoom, and like this mask that looks like one of the masks that you would get on the app is just kind of floating in the middle of the room, and it looks. And this is actually really creepy. This is one of these things where I thought all the drawers and cabinets opening was a bit, okay, cheesy trope, whatever.
Right.
But this face floating there was so like David Lynch, and just kind of surreal. It was this, just this creepy, almost translucent face, just sort of like sitting there, and then eventually it turned at one point for a little jump scare, and that was a neat little moment. And she runs back to her bedroom, and she just sort of hides under her sheet. And I'm like, what do you think the sheet's going to do? This entity's like floating around in the house. What do you think it's going to happen?
The weird thing with her though is it does seem like, yeah, she has that like very scary moment, but then it seems like nothing really happens for like a long time for her, because then like eventually, she gets this kind of grisly demise and stuff by the end, but like it feels like there's a long while where it's just like nothing's happening to her, which seemed kind of weird.
Yeah, that was a little bit strange. Radina has a bit of build up to hers where a couple of creepy things happen first, where the oven turns on randomly in the background. She can't find her boyfriend, even though we never seen him leave, and she messages him, phones him, and his phone's in the house. It's like, oh, where did he go? Like, what's going on here? And it's not until later that he drops from the ceiling, from behind her, and it's a good jump scare moment. And I think, is she the one who also has the she's got like the no, it's not her, it's the one with the mask who's got the powder or the sugar or whatever it is, the flour maybe.
Oh yeah.
And she's like throwing it, trying to like see if she can see him, and eventually there's footsteps on it. So, which is fun and effective, but again, it's a bit tropey, right? We've seen this done before with invisible entities. The whole do something on the floor to see the footstep. Paranormal Activity literally did that.
Yeah.
So it's some of it is very old hat, but like again, like, and maybe this is just a symptom, but maybe if they'd taken instead of 12 weeks, maybe take 16, just to maybe maybe see if you can come up with some other ideas for how to do some of the scary stuff. Yeah. But that's it.
I think
some of them are very effective though. As much as I'm saying some of them aren't, some of them are very good. It's there's ups and downs in the scary stuff.
And I think one of the things that kind of helps it too is that, like, once the big stuff basically starts happening, it does not let up. So I feel like even if maybe there is stuff that's a little contrived or whatever, you're on like such a like fast going roller coaster that you don't really stop and think about it that much, like because it's just like boom 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 and then on to like the next thing.
Yeah, and then because eventually, like, Haley, who because she's the one we started with, she kind of feels like the main one, even though it's kind of equal for the most part. She ends up.
It seems like Haley and Jemma seems to have kind of like a relationship. They feel like a little more
close,
important, I guess.
It starts with those two because we meet Haley first, then Jemma, so it kind of ends with those two as well. But Haley actually gets dragged out of the room, and she's actually gone for a long time because Jemma at this point feels so guilty about starting all this, and she's so scared that she actually grabs a mask and runs out the house. And I was actually being kind of critical because the mask wasn't covering her nose when she left the house, and I'm like, Jemma, it's not doing anything if you don't cover your nose too. To be fair, by the time she arrives, it is. But in the meantime,
it is kind of funny too that like I do like, I mean, it is good that she does that, but also it's like, with everything going on, would you really have the state of mind to think like, oh no, gotta put my mask on, like.
Yeah, especially since she's literally just running outside, which is where like, it's nighttime, there's hardly anyone in the street. Like, the masks are really important for going inside anywhere, and they're important for like being close to anyone. Running outside isn't necessarily the the place where it's the most required, but whatever. So she runs to Haley's, but we'll save that because that's kind of the ending. Emma's still under the sheet, and when she's basically left on her own because Gemma's ran off and left her house, and she's on like she does switch to her phone for a bit because you do see her running outside, but I guess that's just so we can see some of it. I mean, honestly though, it feels like a little bit. We didn't really need it, but hey-o.
Sure.
But that's when Teddy comes back on, and he's just kind of drunk, and he's just kind of there, and he's like, "Hey, what's happening? Why is the cameras all empty?" And he's trying, and I think Emma's like trying to tell him like the stuff's going on, and he's not really listening to it. And actually, there's a kind of a bullshit scare thing here. Where his camera turns on, and he introduced earlier on that he's got this creepy puppet, and he has the puppet kind of like come into frame and turn and look at the camera, but it's just him making a joke.
Yeah.
He's not actually, there's nothing supernatural's happening, and he's just sort of joking and laughing, and then of course, the entity kills his wife slash girlfriend. He ends up running around. And his death's the one that actually I thought was kind of tropey, and then he literally got set on fire while he was still alive, and I thought, oh, that's actually quite grisly and kind of unique to see on a found footage thing. So you know what, fair enough, we'll go with it.
Yeah, the death scene of his wife or girlfriend or whatever, that's one where I was like really like, okay, how do they do this? Because she is like lifted into the air and is like flopping around and then like falls into the pool, and like I don't know, maybe that's I don't know, maybe it's just like a simple green screen or something. But again, just kind of thinking of the limitation and stuff, I was wondering how they did that.
Yeah, it's definitely probably the biggest budgeted moment in the movie. And yeah, it probably is just FX. I mean, they probably had time to do a little FX, I imagine.
Yeah.
So
I also like feel kind of bad because I'm like, hey, so can this thing just kill like anyone, like even if they weren't part of the seance? Like,
yeah, Teddy's thing's kind of weird because Teddy left before the seance started, but well, really started. It was before all the proper parts of it anyway.
I guess if he had the candle lit or whatever, maybe that was enough to. But yeah, that was a little strange. And then also he had like the which I thought maybe was going to be a bigger, maybe more effective moment where they kind of make this big deal about this like music box, this like creepy music box that he has that plays, but like
it just plays a bit when he's like being tense, and in the build up to his kill he hears it.
Yeah, so it's not. I was kind of expecting more from that, but I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. So no, that's solid. It's brutal because, like I say, it's when because he basically gets set on fire because he's his torch or whatever runs out, so he actually uses a lighter to light his way, which again is an interesting visual, just having this lighter in frame, and that's the only thing that's lighting anything outside. But then of course it sets him on fire, and him waking up when he's on fire and screaming is pretty brutal. So that was effective, I thought. But of course the ending is that Jemma arrives at Haley's because she wants to see where her friend is, and she finds her sort of hiding in like another room. So they're together, and it feels kind of okay, right? So these two sort of best friends are together, and maybe they're going to try and do something. So they're suspecting that whatever this is in the house, and this is when
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, this is when you notice the clock in the corner, the timer.
Okay.
It's saying,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
It's saying like maybe from the 30-second mark, it's like, no, this call's going to end in 30 seconds. In fact, there's a message about 10 minutes before the end actually that says that you only have 10 minutes left on this call. So that kind of sets you up for, it's going to have a sudden ending in 10 minutes. There's going to be like a thing,
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, a countdown, which is I like. And then, but also, I don't know if you notice this, but I don't know is this around the time where you start noticing the participants number going down?
Yeah, that's also around here too. Yeah,
which another like cool little like trick, I thought.
Yeah, the contrived part here is that Jemma picks up the laptop because she's looking for Haley, and she picks it up and takes it with her when she goes to find her. So we actually see her like in the. I guess the only explanation I have for this is that this is the only source of light she has because the power's out in the apartment. So
okay, yeah.
But I mean, it's a bit of a stretch. It's the only time in the movie where I went, wait, why is she picked up the laptop? She's cared about her friend who might be like lying dead somewhere in the apartment. Like, why is she picking up the laptop? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But so the movie ends with them kind of like they're going down the hall, and Haley's got an old Polaroid camera which she's been sort of like messing around with throughout the movie, and obviously again it's one of these things, but that's going to play a factor as the movie goes on, and she's taking photos with the flashes to see their way going down the hall, and of course it's counting down. It's like 5 seconds left. So like, okay, she's going to flash once more, and we're going to see something. And sure enough, it flashes. We see this demonic face, long hair, all this stuff for a split second, and then it's like nope, call ended, and then that's where the scrolling credits happen. So
I do like the idea of like having the countdown to like, all right, there's gonna be like a big scare at the end. Like I do like that. It was kind of exciting, but I don't know, I just couldn't care less about like this kind of typical demon face jumping out at you at the last second. Like I don't know,
the problem is that so many movies end
Yeah.
this way, right? And even movies of this type specifically end this way, where it's like jump scare, demon in your
exactly.
face.
Yeah.
So it's kind of so when I said earlier that it falls into some tropes, this is definitely one of those moments. Is the ending?
Yeah.
I think the countdown does give it an extra flavor, which makes it exciting at least.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think afterwards, you're like, well, am I satisfied with the ending though? In terms of the end of a story, whatever. It's whatever. But hey, it's and I did like that. There's like a moment of like, and it didn't work, of course, but there's a moment about halfway through where without the medium, Haley tries to like remember what she's been taught about this stuff. Is like, okay, all we have to do is like basically say we're leaving the other world. We're cutting because they talked about like imagining we're all roped to our doors, which is our tether to the world. Like imagine that we all cut the rope and we break the circle and that's it over, and they all turn the lights on. Because I was thinking at one point, like, why aren't they starting to turn the lights on if they're getting scared? Because like there's nothing stopping them. But then eventually they do. We get to a point where almost all of them have their lights turned on, and then creepy stuff still happens, which I think makes it feel a bit more, I guess, real, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. That is one thing I was kind of wondering about if like anything was happening with the medium as well. Like if I do feel like I'm surprised we didn't maybe get one little maybe stinger with her or something, like her internet comes back and we see that something has always also happened on her end or something. I don't know, but feels like that was a weird to leave out.
I don't know how you would do it. I mean, I think because she's the one who's the most helpful, it kind of makes sense in a weird way for the fear of it that help is just gone at a certain point where they can't contact her, and that makes them feel helpless. It adds to how they feel in the movie, I think.
Yeah, I was just curious if if she was part of this like ritual or whatever, is stuff also happening on her end, or I don't know if because she's so knowledgeable about this stuff, was she able to maybe cut it off properly that she's not experience anything or whatever, or did maybe the demon doesn't really want to go after her or whatever because
she respects she respects the other world.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if the demon cares about that. I don't know if the demon gives a shit about who respects the other world. It's just that the lack of respect is what let it in, kind of thing.
Right.
Or let it out, I suppose, maybe is a better term. Yeah. I don't know. But I mean, I had fun. It was, there's some tense moments when they first start hearing noises, and there's like sort of a build up to the first proper like proof that something's going on. Some of the characters' demises are really fun. Some of them are a bit tropey. It uses some mechanics, and I think what I appreciate though, to compare it to the other examples of this, to compare it to Unfriended a little bit, is that Unfriended's about a ghost that's on the internet. So it starts like doing all these creepy things on the computer itself. It starts, it keeps joining the call. It's like a cyber, because the movie was originally called Cybernatural, right? It was a cybernatural ghost, right? I like that this is not that. This is a ghost that's or a demon that's traditional. It just so happens that all the characters are seeing it all through a Zoom call, and that's the lens of which we're viewing it. But the demon itself is not doing creepy things on the computer. Not really anyway. Maybe there's some small things that kinda are, but not to it's more just affecting them in traditional noisy, spooky things, dragging people out their chairs, typical demon shit. So I appreciate that it's at least a little bit different in that, and because of it, it feels a little bit fresher than it maybe otherwise would do. And Friended 2 kind of did the same thing where it changed things up to be like, no, this is a stolen computer, and who does this belong to? That's kind of the creepy element, and that's where that takes that. So I like that at least I've not copied the core mechanic or the core like plot that's playing out through the mechanic yet. I think the problem we're going to have is when we start getting more of these and they start like, okay, this one's either a repeat of the host, or it's a repeat of Unfriended, or it's a repeat of whatever, like we're going to start doubling up, and that's when we're really going to start to feel the fatigue, I think, like we do with found footage, because so many found footage movies, the reason why they suck so much is not only because they're obviously bad acting and things like that, but also it's because they're just copying the ending of Blair Witch. That's all they're doing.
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, like when we watched Unfriended, I think one of the points we're making is like, oh, this is really good, but hey, we don't want to see a million movies like this. And then yeah, I think the reason why we've been surprised with everything that's been good so far is like you said, they're not really copying each other. Like everything is kind of, even if they still have tropey elements and stuff to in it, they are still finding unique ways to go about it and present it. But yeah, it kind of worries me that once this stuff gets popular, especially like now when people are starting to realize like, oh yeah, we can film something like this with everything that's going on, that yeah, I do worry about getting something that is just going to be a more brazen like copy or rip off or whatever.
It's inevitable that it's going to happen. It really is. I'm surprised that it's not really happened yet, but I think between Unfriended and Host, there's enough buzz created from these two movies that it's probably going to happen soon. We're going to start seeing these knockoffs that are going to be really painful to sit through, and we'll tackle those as we come. But at least so far, they've all had their own spin on it, and they've all kind of said, what can we do with this format that's not been done yet? And I can appreciate that if nothing else. So,
Totally.
But characters are natural enough. Enough of the scares are fun. It's a solid time. It's an hour long.
Yeah.
I can't really not recommend it. It's
Oh no,
watch.
totally. Yeah. No. I was again, I was going in with pretty high expectations, and I don't know if they were completely met. Like, it's not like. I mean, it is definitely one of the better movies this year, but just for the fact alone that we haven't gotten as many movies this year. Although we do get a lot of like VOD stuff, but no, I mean it was still a solid time, and I had fun with it. I was happy with it. I think it is something where you and me are obviously very desensitized to a lot of horror, so I don't think like stuff scares us that much. But like my wife was terrified watching this movie. Like there's a couple of scenes where she was outright like, all right, like this is this is too much. And I think this stuff kind of helps with like the difference with found footage between like this and found footage is like I don't relate to found footage as much because like I don't go around taping myself that much. Like every now and again maybe you have like a stupid video with your phone or something, but like I'm not constantly going around trying to make a document of my life. But like these movies on Skype and Zoom, I think is something like you can easily see yourself being in, because this whether for work or catching up with friends or like podcasting like we do, like it's something that you visualize yourself on a little tiny box talking to someone.
I spend so much of my week on Skype and Discord calls that like this is oddly relatable when I'm watching one of these. I'm like pardon me, I'm dying, don't worry.
But no, like I think this was like really fun, and it's cool that it's getting like a lot of hype, and and again, like other than being like a solid movie, just like all the circumstances and stuff around it just make it really interesting for the times, for sure. I don't know, it will be kind of interesting to see like 3, 4, I don't know, 10 years later, like if it'll still be like held in high regard or whatnot.
I feel like it's one that may be remembered more for its context than its actual quality as a movie on its own. It'll be kind of like a time capsule, if nothing else, and that's maybe what it'll serve in terms of its purpose. But that is Host. So, Tim, what are you going to rate Host out of 10?
I'm gonna give it a pretty good score. I think I'm gonna go with an 8. I think it's very effective with what it does. It's able to utilize the setting and the timing and everything very well, and the characters are all likable, and there's some good scares and fun stuff that it does. I wish I could go like a little higher, but I just think the one thing maybe kind of holding it back is a little bit of the tropiness, which even if like the stuff that we've kind of seen before or whatever, it's still done well, like so I don't want to say like necessarily that most of it's like bad, but again, it is just kind of stuff that you're a little used to and seen before. So I think maybe that just holds it back just a little bit, getting a very high better score. But I mean, 8 is still pretty good score.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit lower. I think I'm gonna go with a 7. I think it's good. I think there's enough unique things about it. There's enough unique things in how it presents itself. There's a couple of particularly good creepy moments or scares. I like the mask bit. I like the video background stuff, and some of the really simple stuff with the first hearing noises is quite effective because it's I think the actors do a really good job of feeling natural, and it does a really good job therefore of as they slowly start to discover and sort of accept or believe that something's happening and get scared. It kind of does a lot to draw you in, and I think that's where the real tension comes from. But as you said, as I've been saying throughout the review, there's definitely enough of the scares and enough of the moments that feel kind of just straight lifted out of like your generic, spooky supernatural movie 101 playbook. So because of that, I think I have to. I never got like super enthusiastic by the end because of that. So I will say it's simply good with a 7. Has some things to say against it, but has a lot of good qualities, and the context is obviously very fascinating. And almost maybe to a negative where I was thinking about it during certain scenes where because the scene where she's got up to the attic, I'm like, wait, how did they light this? Because did they tell the actress over Zoom like how to do some basic lighting and stuff? Just I was curious. Because it is more complex than you might think. If you don't know much about movie making, lighting a scene so it looks proper on camera, even the Zoom webcam like this, it does take a bit of effort so that you're seeing what you're supposed to see and not seeing what you're not supposed to see. So there you go. That is host. I will make Tim do his pose for the thumbnail in a second. Although I will first of all say that if you have made it this far in the review, to put in the comments down below on YouTube. Put in the word astroplane. Astroplane is the word if you made it this far. So Tim, I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1 and say pose, and you can pose for the thumbnail. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. I was waiting for you to stop moving. You were kind of still shaking a little bit for the first chunk of that. But very good, very good. Maybe I'll I can't. I need to cut around it. I was gonna say maybe I'll get like a sheet over my head and do the look under the sheet like Emma has, but I can't really cut around that for the glow. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll think of something else. But yeah, that's host. So let us know what you think of the movie in the comments. It's always nice to see. You can of course like and subscribe. Like is important, as I said at the start of the video. So please go do that. You guys on Twitter at Screams Midnight for updates and whatever shambles of jokes and nonsense that Tim puts on there. I mean I post on there too, but the stupid stuff tends to come from Tim. So go.
I won't even deny it.
Yeah, go look at the Twitter. And then other than that, check out other content that we have. The ACE, the Atomic Cinema Experiments, the sci-fi movie podcast that I do with Tara. So it's kind of the sister show to this one, but with science fiction instead of horror. So maybe go check out that. There's some interesting stuff over there if you're interested. But otherwise, that is pretty much us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.